All right, we'll do one more mic check, line check for every camera there. Mic check 1, 2, Carla. ¿Tienes niveles? Sí? Okay, good.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to begin in 1 minute. 1 minute. 1 minute.
First of all, hello to everyone. Thank you for being here. I in particular want to thank all the elected officials behind me today. We're here because we're outraged at what we saw on Friday. It's just outrageous what we saw. What we had was ICE agents that would storm a local business. They terrorized the patrons there, the workers. The restaurant manager, one of them describes being immediately pushed against the wall, handcuffed by officers. He was traumatized. The scenes that we saw play out on the streets were absolutely unacceptable. Why were ICE agents armed to the teeth as if they were entering a war zone, storming restaurants? Why were ICE agents aggressively shoving people against the walls and handcuffing every worker in sight? In fact, interestingly, as you read the warrant says that they were going to arrest everyone, detain everyone in there, all the employees. I don't know how a federal judge signs off on that. Just think of that. It's like I just had an interview with CBS. Just think of this. If an order went out to CBS and said there's some undocumented people at CBS, so we're going to arrest everyone at Channel 8. Everyone. And we'll find out. I know some people like that. I know that. And then we're going to find out who's undocumented and who isn't. That's outrageous. What about the rights of those citizens? And not only that, we're going to go in there armed to the teeth. We're going to have machine guns. And on the way out, we're going to do some of these flash bang grenades. This is a neighborhood. This is a family neighborhood. So why was this done? Was it done really to simply arrest the cook and the waiter and the busboy? No, it was for intimidation. That's what it was for. This was to intimidate and to bring terror and fear into everybody's hearts, especially immigrants here. Well, I got to tell you one thing. We're not scared here. We're not intimidated. We're fighting back. And we're saying this is not going to happen in our community. And one of the things that I'm demanding is that we meet with the chief judge here at the Southern District Court to ask, why are they signing off on these warrants? What about the rights of the people that did nothing wrong and they were detained, they were handcuffed? How many people have been handcuffed? I've never been handcuffed in my life. And to be handcuffed because somebody else may have done something wrong, and by the way, reading the warrant, no murderers, no rapists, nothing like that. What was their crime? That they were working at the restaurant without documents. That's it. There was no issue of murders, no crimes, and if it was, it wasn't in the warrant. None of that. Why in the world would a judge sign off on that to see then the terror that we saw in our community? And that's why we're here to say we won't stand for it. We won't allow it. Not here, not in our community, not in San Diego, not in our community. We won't allow terror to happen like this. And it's a shame. It's a shame, and I hate to say this because I hate going after federal judges because they have very difficult work. I know that, and I respect them. But this was a mistake on their part, a terrible mistake. They allowed it to happen in this community, and they shouldn't have. Shame on them. And they need to correct that. They need to make sure that when they sign off on a warrant, that they don't allow a community to be terrorized like it was, and innocent people to be arrested, detained, shoved up against the wall when they did nothing wrong. And that's why we're here, because we're pissed off.
That's right.
And we're not going to allow this to happen. So with that, I'd like to introduce one of my colleagues, Scott Peters, who will then pass it on to another colleague. But again, I want to thank each and every one of here. We have, as you can see, a number of elected officials. We also have people here from the church, different groups saying none of this will be allowed in our community. We're fighting back.
Who was the judge?
The judge was Karen Crawford.
Thank you, Congressman Vargas. Thanks for everyone for being here. Friday night, while people were dining with their families, the grandparents, their kids, on dates, people having a good time, in a quiet, wonderful neighborhood called South Park that I'm privileged to represent, in which Sarah Jacobs represented in her first term. 20 federal agents entered the restaurant with machine guns, and people were traumatized. The diners were traumatized. Kids were traumatized. I spoke to the owner later. He was traumatized. He's got a family here. But people must have thought, wow, there must be MS-13 here, or some drug kingpin, maybe someone like El Chapo's at the bar. No. They took 4 people away, dishwashers, busboys, maybe a cook. This made our community no safer, made it less safe with all that happened, right? And I want to say a few words about waste, fraud, abuse, and terrorism. You know, tomorrow, San Diego Police Department could decide it is so concerned about people who don't pay their speeding tickets that they're going to go out with machine guns into the community and find those people and track them down. And we would say that's ridiculous. We would say that's ridiculous because it's so disproportionate to what the danger is. We'd also say it's a huge waste of money. But this isn't just happening here. It's happening across the country. People are going to be in restaurants and taken away. Cooks are going to be taken away. Farm workers are going to be taken away. People working in home health care and hospitals and cafeterias will be taken away like this. And if they try to do it with 20 agents to get 4 people, it's going to take them a hell of a lot of money and time to get 11 million undocumented people out of the United States of America who are part of our communities and part of our economy. We know that's not going to work. We know that the alternative is to figure out what this immigration system should look like. We should secure the border, figure out what our labor needs are, and match up our immigration system with that. That's what we should do. But no, we're going to get this terrible, terrible waste of resources. The big, beautiful bill that they passed has $100 billion added to do stuff like this. Okay, think about that. You want to talk about waste? That's waste. We were told that this whole move on immigration to deportation was about violent criminals. Well, we know that's not true. These people just washing dishes presented no threat at all. They're helping our community. They were our neighbors and our coworkers. They're not murderers. That promise that this is about violent criminals, that was a fraud. And we are seeing abuse of people. I mean, imagine how you would have felt if you were with your kids in that restaurant and you saw this display. But imagine if you're one of those people working here just trying to earn a living to support your family, and you're taken away, taken from your job, from your community, from your family. That's abusive, and that's the intent. And that's what we saw on Friday night. There's been some talk about terrorism, and I want to say these ICE agents are not terrorists. I think it's worse than that. I want to say if any right-wingers are listening, that What happened in Boulder, Colorado, that was terrorism. What happened in Washington, D.C., the shooting of those 2 kids, that was terrorism. And elected officials should come together, call that out, speak up against it. Law enforcement should cooperate to get those people arrested, and the justice system should put them behind bars. And by the way, they shouldn't be pardoned if they're convicted of violent crimes. They should serve their time, and we should all be for that. But terrorism is a threat that comes from outside your government against us. And I'd almost feel better if these kinds of things were from outside our government, but they're not. Those same ICE agents, they weren't conducting these raids with machine guns 6 months ago to go find a couple cooks and a couple busboys to make a show of. They were not doing that. They're now being directed by Washington, D.C. This is what Washington, D.C. is telling them to do. Okay? It's coming from inside our own government. This is our government terrorizing our own communities. And that is absolutely upside down, wrong-headed. And we've all got to stand up against that. We've got to stop that. We're going to try to help these 4 people and their families. We're going to try to help that restaurant owner who I spoke to on the phone, was in tears about what's happened to him. He just so much for him to process. But we all have a lot of work to do to fix this government that's never been more divided and more broken than it is under this Washington, D.C. And I know my colleagues will stand with me. I want to thank everyone for being here. This is a tragic, tragic thing that happens. It is an outrage. And I think you can see from the presence here that we're going to push back on it. We're going to stop it. Ladies and gentlemen, Sarah Jacobs.
Well, thank you, Scott and Juan, and everyone for being here. Over the past week, the immigration enforcement tactics we've seen in San Diego have crossed a new line. We saw people arrested here at the courthouse who were just trying to go through the legal process, and we saw chaos and endangering of public safety in South Park. This isn't about going after criminals. They're going after people who are trying to do the right thing and people who are contributing to our economy, people who are literally showing up for their appointments to do the right thing. On Friday night, HSI agents treated 2 South Park restaurants more like war zones than popular places where families were having dinner. Riot gear, smoke grenades, flashbangs, and mass arrests weren't necessary to conduct their operations. They were reckless, counterproductive, and unnecessarily escalatory. Bystanders and families could have easily gotten hurt, and all of this trauma and fear and intimidation was completely avoidable. Even before this, I've been hearing from so many people who are scared of going to work or going to the grocery store or dropping their kids off at school or daycare out of fear of getting arrested or interrogated by federal immigration authorities. And that fear is so much more real now. And it's the opposite of what we want. We don't want people to be afraid to seek help. We don't want trust to be replaced with silence and suspicion. And that's why we're all here today, to call attention to this incident and to ensure accountability. I've been in contact with the agent in charge of the most recent operation. I've communicated my deep concern about these unhelpful and unnecessary tactics, and we will maintain our oversight of HSI, ICE, DHS, and all entities that are conducting similar immigration raids and sweeps. But while we do that, I also think it's important to recognize that these raids don't reflect San Diego. They don't reflect who we are. We're a cross-border community, and for generations, immigrants have built their lives here, starting businesses, raising families, and enriching our communities with diverse languages, traditions, and foods. San Diego's identity is deeply rooted in our role as a welcoming place of opportunity, hope, and understanding. Our identity isn't reflected in these raids, but rather in the aftermath. Since Friday night, we've seen an outpouring of support and love and concern from the South Park neighborhood and all over San Diego. That is who we are. That is San Diego. We're a community that cares about one another and that will stand by one another even in the most trying circumstances. And that's why we're going to keep pushing for everyone in our community, no matter their immigration status, to be treated with dignity, humanity, rights, and respect that they deserve. Thank you. I'll now turn it over to my colleague, Congressman Levin.
Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you so much to Juan and Scott and Sarah and to all who are here. I want to give you just 2 data points. The first is 3,000 3,000 is what Stephen Miller has said is the target for the number of people that the United States should deport day in and day out. Setting an arbitrary quota is what created a mess like what we saw on Friday. And it'll continue unless we all speak out against it in communities like this all across the United States. Second data point is 20%. 20% of the service sector jobs of the employees in Greater San Diego are undocumented immigrants. These are people who do the hard work day in and day out in our community, who make our economy go, and they are contributing positively to our economy and to our society. I think very much that if the quota, the arbitrary quota of 3,000 continues, that you could see business after business in communities like ours and all across this country continue to be the targets of these sorts of attacks. And it's unacceptable. And I would offer un-American. You wouldn't know by looking at me or by my last name, but my mom's parents came to the United States from Mexico when they were young. My grandfather was 15 years old. He didn't speak English or have money or have any formal education, but he believed very strongly that if you work hard and play by the rules, you could come to the United States and make a better life for yourself and for your family and for future generations. My grandma came when she was only 3 years old, and they met, and eventually they got married. They moved to Los Angeles. They started a business renting jukeboxes. They worked incredibly hard, and they did well. And all 4 of their daughters, including my mom, wound up getting college degrees. 11 grandkids. I'm the youngest of the 11 grandkids, and I'm now a member of the House of Representatives. That's how it's supposed to work in the United States of America. But I spoke with my mom this morning, and I asked her, Mom, do you think that under these circumstances, under these threats, under this sort of intimidation, would Grandma and Grandpa even have come to the United States? Would my grandfather have taken that chance if the environment then were the way it is today? And she said that she honestly didn't know. And that, for me, means the American dream is eroding unless we all stand up and fight for it. So I want to thank everybody for coming out behind me, for what we're going to do in our communities, which is tell everybody that you cannot live in fear, you cannot live in intimidation, and this kind of garbage that we saw on Friday, that's not what made America great in the first place, and it's not what will make America great in the future. And with that, I'd like to hand it off to our great mayor in the city of San Diego, Todd Gloria.
Thank you, Congressman Levin, and thank you to all of our members of Congress here today for their support, and for their partnership, and for standing with our community. I'm pleased to be here along with Councilmember Stephen Whitburn and Councilmember Raul Campillo. Some of our other councilmembers would like to be here, but they're conducting business back at City Hall. I want to speak plainly this morning about what happened on Friday in our city. It was reckless and it was unacceptable. The use of flashbang devices by federal immigration agents following a raid on a local restaurant posed an unacceptable safety risk to all. Let me be very clear. This kind of operation does not promote public safety. It undermines it. Our community's trust in law enforcement is diminished when scenes like that unfold in their communities. This was dangerous, and it could have dramatically escalated an already tense situation. But most of all, it traumatized not only the workers in the targeted establishments, but an entire community in my city, and I will never be okay with that. We all know of the enforcement direction that is coming out of Washington, D.C. Many of us strongly disagree with it. But regardless of how we feel or how anyone feels about these policies, everyone should expect that federal agencies carrying out these directives do so with the safety of all residents in mind. As mayor of this city, I have raised this directly to the HSI's leadership, and I will continue to fight for the dignity, rights, and security of everyone who calls San Diego home. San Diego is one of the safest big cities in the United States of America, period. We are a city of laws, and we are a city of values. We believe in due process, and we believe in the dignity of all human beings. And we believe that federal operations should be conducted with the respect for the lives of everyone involved, residents, bystanders, and law enforcement officers alike. To the people of this great city, and especially those in the South Park community, let me just say this. I know that Friday night's incident has left many of you angry and afraid. And I want you to know that as your mayor, I will do everything I can to push back against those who seek to use our neighborhoods as a backdrop for fear and for chaos. We are in this together, San Diego, and we will get through it together. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate that very much. Thank you. Thank you. And council member, thank you. And I know the other council members are here. Thank you for all of you for standing together here. We appreciate each and every one of you. We're now happy to take questions from anybody. Yes, sir.
Yeah, could you talk about whether there's any kind of legislative strategy or I mean, it's one thing to reach out individually, like
Yeah.
Representative Jacobs did, but what's the plan? I think people in San Diego are trying to figure out what is leadership doing about it.
Well, unfortunately, as you know, those of us who are against this are not in charge. I mean, this is coming from the president and from the Homeland Security Secretary, by the way, who thinks it's fun to shoot her puppy and her goat. That's the person that we're dealing with here. Just think about that. In her book, she wanted people to know that when she went bird hunting with her dog, that the dog, when she shot a bird, got happy about it and didn't immediately go and retrieve the bird. So what she did was, she took this puppy, it was still a puppy, took it to the granite pile, shot it dead. I mean, that's the person that we're working with today. So I don't think we're going to get much out of the administration, frankly. That's why we're here at the court. The courts have been where we have been able to fight back. The courts have fought back aggressively because the administration is not following the law. Just think about that, what they did in that community, my community. By the way, it's 8 blocks away from where I live. My daughter's here, and when she was a little girl, she was finicky. Not anymore. And my wife and I used to put her in the stroller and take her right through that area. It was before the restaurant was there. There was another establishment there. But that's the same neighborhood. And to think that that neighborhood, that quiet neighborhood, 8 blocks from my house, had these flashbang grenades going off, this chaos, people with machine guns out there to arrest the cook. And why? Because the court allowed it. The court should have never allowed that. How do you sign off on a warrant that says that you can arrest everybody that's there? I mean, you have within the warrant, if you read it, identified people. Why don't you just go and get the identified people? Why do you arrest everybody? I mean, the manager, why was he arrested? He's an American citizen, thrown up against the wall. This is outrageous. This is not following the law. This is terror, and they do it on purpose because it's intimidation. The court should not be part of this. That's why I wanted to hold it here, so the court hears the community and says, do your job. You're an independent part of government. There's 3 independent parts of government. There's the Congress, there's the presidency, and there are the courts. The courts need to be independent. Here they signed off. It took them 1 day. She just signed off on it, just like that, without doing any investigation. It's an outrage. It's an outrage. Everyone should be out. That should have never happened. What we saw there should have never happened. The court should not have allowed it, and they did. That's why I'm pissed. And that's what we can do. We can work through the courts, because this wasn't following the law. This is following the terror book, the book of intimidation, bullies. That's not the law. That's why we're here. Yeah.
Sorry, just to add to your question, as Juan mentioned, we're in the minority party, but I know all of our teams are looking into what legislative options there are. But I don't want to minimize the oversight that we all have been doing, because oversight is a constitutionally mandated part of our job. And by showing up and asking questions, we know that we have been able to change behavior. And also all of this public pressure, actually really works, right? We saw them change their policies on the student visa revocations in the first Trump administration, on separations at the border because of public pressure. And so I do think all of us standing up and speaking out and saying this is not okay in our community, that does matter. And even as we work to try and figure out if there's anything we can do with our legislative power, our oversight power, and the voice of this community is really, really important as we push things forward.
Let me just say, just to answer your question about what track we're on, which is the Republican bill they just did to expand tax cuts for people, does add some spending, and it's $100 billion for more of this. So you're going to see more of this across the country. So that's where we're starting from far back. We've got to do what Sarah said. We've got to speak up and let people know about that. We've got to do what Juan said, make sure we energize the courts to fight back. But the Republican plan is more of this.
Yeah, I would add that it was brought up about the separation of children from their mothers. That actually was stopped right here in this courthouse by a very courageous judge. The chief judge here said that that's illegal. And he didn't allow the Trump administration and the first Trump administration to do that. It happened right here, a courageous judge. We need courageous judges again to stand up. That's why we're here. You had a question. Somebody did over here.
My question was,
And who are you, by the way, if you could identify yourself?
my name is Brooke Pinkowski. I'm the morning editor for Times of San Diego.
Yes, thank you.
My question is, how can the community effectively support this? I know the community wants to know what to do, other than turn out on the spur of the moment. And how can they support Buena Porchetta, and the community overall?
Well, first of all, for speaking out. I mean, the community needs to speak out. We need to speak out loud and clear that we won't tolerate this. That this is intolerable and we won't tolerate it. That's the first thing we need to do. Then we do need to make our voices here heard at the court. The court oftentimes seems like something very far away that you can't talk to. No, the reason that the founders put the courts in there is to make sure that government didn't overstep. It's overstepped wildly here. It's the courts that has to rein in government. It has a responsibility. It can't hide behind these walls. And that's what the people need to tell the government, need to tell the court. We see you. We see that you allowed something to happen that's terrible in our community that really is against the law. It's the Fourth Amendment. You should be protected on your person, your property, against these sort of seizures. If you read the Fourth Amendment, the first thing is against your person. When you get arrested, that's a seizure. That right there violates the law when you haven't done anything. The court needs to hear from the community. And identify yourself first.
My name is Nova. I go by one name, Nova. And I'm a pillar of the community, and I actually live in the community
Okay.
that was attacked on Friday.
Yep.
But
Your question?
I want to know, because I want to bring it back to Friday. I've lived in San Diego for 7 years,
Okay.
and I've been attacked twice in San Diego.
So what's your question?
But my question is, do you think you're doing enough locally? Because I think we still racially profile here. I'm from Stockton, and I'm scared to live in San Diego. And
Okay, thank you. I have your question now. Okay, so the question was, are we doing enough? No, I don't think we're doing enough locally. I think we can do a lot more. I have to tell you, though, there's some people that really stood up. I thank the mayor. I thank the mayor much. He has stood up. I thank the council members that are here. You know what? They should be 3 or 4 times as many people standing behind us right now saying we won't tolerate this. So there's a lot of community members. I mean, just to be frank, I mean, I see a member here that's running for something. I don't see the other person that's running. I mean, there should be a lot of people here. Hold on a second. I know I've heard your. Yeah, I get that. I happen to know that.
Filipina, I want to know if I can feel safe again in the community where those people.
Okay, wait a second. Hold on.
Where someone in the community did it. It's a MAGA-run town, people. Let's not pretend. I'm from a town where people don't want to move to. But this
Okay.
we promote that we're the 5, the 5th.
Okay. You've had your question. This is not the Senate where you get to filibuster. Okay, so you filibustering now. We got your question. So I think that we are. Yeah, me too. I live there 8 blocks from there. Don't tell me where it is. I've been there. I've been here for 64 years. I didn't get here 8 years ago. 64 years. So. Yeah, I just wanted your opinion. So. I think that, of course, there is racial profiling going on here. There's no doubt about that. Absolutely. And we won't tolerate, and we're going to push back. And it's happening everywhere, and not just here. Yes? Well, this happened on Friday, so unfortunately I haven't had a conversation with them yet. We've tried, but again, this happened on Friday afternoon. The offices were closed back in Washington. Now, I know that others have, and that's why I'm going to pass it on to them.
Yeah, I talked to the special agent in charge of the operation. You know, this is not the first time we've had to deal with HSI. I represent El Cajon, where there was a workplace raid a few weeks ago. I will say the local folks are trying to be as responsive to our questions as possible, and you know, I think are open to the feedback that we have, but that's not the case. That's not the feedback we're getting from sort of the folks in Washington, D.C. What did they say about?
Oh.
You'll have to ask them. I don't want to speak for them, but they understood our concerns.
I could tell you, it's outrageous, and they shouldn't have done it. I mean,
Yes,
that's
I
the
agree with
reality.
that
It's
too.
outrageous. There shouldn't be grenades going off on communities like South Park. I know they don't always speak to us too, believe me. Yeah, Mayor? Yep.
I would say that my experience is very similar to Congresswoman Jacobs. I want to express my appreciation to the special agent in charge. When I got my request to him, he responded quickly. We were on the phone. He answered every question that I asked of him and was open to the feedback that I provided, which was that this was not the right time or place to do this. I acknowledge that they have a job to do. There's a boss in Washington asking for this, but the execution of this was needlessly reckless. Doing this on a Friday night during dinner service at a very popular restaurant in a residential community really created the circumstances that you saw happen there. Acknowledge that there's enforcement actions that are taken daily in this community, but not all of them result in what we saw on the streets of our city, and we have to all say that that made no one safe, to include the federal agents that were there. And so we have to do better going forward, and so I expressed that, provided my feedback, again, was willing to take my call, was willing to listen, to answer every question. So I think that's a basis from which we can hopefully work. But reminder that we have, the city of San Diego will always follow federal and state law, and so we will not coordinate with ICE. We will not, our police department does not perform those tasks. We will follow SB 54. But bottom line was that I think everyone, allow you to, I know they may not be as responsive, allow you to talk to them, but I think everyone involved in this incident recognizes that this did not go well, and that to the extent that this direction is still coming from Washington on a go-forward basis, it can't go like this. This cannot be this way. And I appreciate, again, the special agent in charge for taking the call, for hearing the feedback, and I imagine he'll be hearing from myself and from others going forward on what we expect when these kinds of operations happen in the city of San Diego.
What can you guys tell us of the 4 people? What can you guys tell us about the 4 people? Do they have families? How long have they lived in this country? Where are they from?
Well, my understanding is 4 Mexican nationals and 1, I believe, 3 are Mexican nationals and 1 is from Colombia, I believe. That's about all the information I have at the moment. I know that a lot of the employees there have families. I go there. My wife and I, we like to go there. The Tuta de Mar is really good, to be fair. But I have to tell you, it's shocking that it happened there. It really is. It's an interesting community because it's not a commercial area. It's actually a residential area. It's a residential area where it's very old, and that's why you have some of these grandfathered restaurants that you can have there. I don't even know today if you could have a restaurant like that in a community. I mean, I think they should, and Mayor maybe should look at that. But the truth is that that's why it's there, because it's a very old community. There's a school that's about a block away. And to have grenades going off there in that community is outrageous. We can't have that. Now, I do want to say this. I've been in office now for some time. I've met a lot of ICE agents. I can assure you that almost every ICE agent there didn't want to be there doing that. they did not want to be in there disrupting, running into a restaurant like that with machine guns to arrest the cook. They're getting those orders from Washington. They don't want to be, they do want to be arresting the murderers and the rapists. They don't want to be arresting the busboy. And that's why I say that this is outrageous. We have to fight back. We can't allow this. This is not about gang members or anything like that. This is about intimidation. This is plain ass old bullying that you remember from high school. That's what this is, and we're not going to be bullied. We're not afraid, and we're fighting back. Yeah, of course.
Just because I don't want it to go unmissed, to respond to your question, the one thing we don't know about any of these people is that they have any kind of criminal record at all, okay? As far as we know, they're a busboy or a dishwasher or a cook, and their only crime is working hard in the wrong place. And it's outrageous. It's not San Diego, and it's un-American.
I have one more question. You criticized the judge and the fact that she signed off on
Yes.
it. Do you plan on communicating or have you communicated with her?
Not with her personally. That's why I want to meet with the chief judge. The chief judge really is the person that's responsible here for this courthouse. And I have to tell you, I know the chief judge and the prior one. I've been around for a long time. These are good judges. I hate criticizing the federal judges here because I think they're really good and courageous. They made a mistake. This was a mistake. And they can't continue to make this mistake. And again, I applaud them in the past. They've been great judges. I think we have particularly good judges here in San Diego. But this was a mistake. It was a terrible mistake. And it shouldn't happen again. One last question here. Oh, two questions then. Go here first. Well, obviously, this is all intimidation. I don't know if the mayor wants to speak to it, but what it is intimidation. What Trump wants to do is intimidate cities, states that are humane, that treat people, like human beings. And I think that's what this is all about. And again, we're pushing back hard on this, and we're going to continue to do that. The mayor might want to come. Oh.
Yeah, I just want to say this is part of a broader tactic by the Republicans. In fact, this upcoming week, in the House of Representatives, we will have a series of bills in which House Republicans are trying to do punitive action against different localities and states who have certain laws that prohibit their local law enforcement from being able to engage with federal immigration authorities. I think for a party that says they want to delegate more responsibility to the states and to localities, I think it's pretty clear that actually what they want is control, whether it's in this immigration policy or whether it's in reproductive health care or anything else. This is not about delegating authority to the states. This is about them wanting to control everything, and that's what we're going to see in these series of votes this upcoming week.
Just quickly into your question about last week's list that was issued. Reminder that last night that list was rescinded by the Department of Homeland Security. Everyone saw that it's riddled with inaccuracies, communities that can't identify why they're on there, typos. I mean, so I don't think it's a huge surprise it got pulled back. Is it going to come back again? Probably. Reminder, the city of San Diego is a welcoming city. We follow state law. We obviously have a state sanctuary law. We also follow federal law. So we never received, to my knowledge, any formal notification from the federal government. We saw a press release, but no formal notification. So that process is confusing as a lot of things that are coming out of D.C. The other thing, to your point about federal funding, I mean, obviously that is a concern, but I will tell you that that's already at risk or has been taken away. The front page of today's paper lists local community groups that are working on the forefront of environmental challenges are losing their grant funding now, before this list was put out last week and then rescinded last night. And I would point out that in the president's budget proposals, he's going after key programs for cities like San Diego's, like CDBG, home funds, emergency services grants, a lot of the backbone of our cities and America's homeless response systems. So with regard, we don't want to lose a nickel of taxpayer money. San Diegans send a lot of taxpayer money back to Washington, D.C., and we expect our fair share back. But to the extent that we are already under attack for federal funding, both in the actions already taken for grants that were denied or rescinded, to the proposals coming out of Washington that are slashing or eliminating funding, know that we are already in that position today, and we will fight alongside our congressional delegation for our fair share of resources out of Washington, D.C.
So as a member of the Appropriations Committee, I want to reaffirm that it is Congress and only Congress that has the power of the purse. The President cannot unilaterally impound funds that have been appropriated by the Congress of the United States. We're going to fight tooth and nail in the courts, and we're going to get a favorable decision on impoundment. Let me also say, if there is any evidence, even a shred of evidence, that any of the individuals at that restaurant on Friday were guilty of any other crimes, if they were violent in any way, if they were gang members, if they were drug dealers, that evidence needs to be put forward right now, today. And in the absence of that evidence, what happened on Friday was fundamentally wrong, fundamentally un-American, and could happen, presumably, to 1 in 5 San Diegans working in the service sector. This is not who we are and not what anybody voted for last November. The people that supported President Trump in the election, they supported his promise that he was going to focus on criminals and gang members and drug dealers. This is not that. This is an arbitrary quota being set by Stephen Miller of 3,000 a day, and these are the results when you stick to arbitrary and capricious and unnecessary actions. And to Juan's point, the law enforcement professionals who work hard, they don't want this any more than our community does.
I have seen the search warrant, and in the search warrant, it doesn't talk about anybody's criminal record other than to say that they're undocumented, that they're just working without papers. I know, sir, you had a question. I want to keep my...
I'm just curious, does this have legs, this story? What are you hearing on the national level from your colleagues and on the state level? What are you sending people here?
Well,
California?
well, we're hearing throughout the country that this is happening. It was particularly ugly here Friday, but we're seeing this in different places. Intimidation. That's why I want to thank all of my friends and colleagues here today. Each one of them, if we had time, would come up here and tell you how outraged they are at what happened on Friday. That's why they're here. They're standing here. And I hope that more people have the courage to stand up and say, we won't tolerate this. We won't allow this to happen in our community. Sé que hay algunos de aquí que quieren hablar en español y por eso les voy a decir esto. Nosotros estamos aquí porque lo que vimos el viernes pasado aquí en este salón fue realmente una cosa horrorosa, una cosa que no debía de pasar. ¿Qué pasó allí? Entraron personas con metralladoras, entraron allí con muchas armas para arrestar el muchacho que trabaja ahí limpiando las mesas. Para eso. No había ningún criminal que ellos enseñan, ninguno. Era pobre gente que nomás está ahí trabajando, tratando de ganarse la vida. Y por eso nosotros estamos aquí, enojados. ¿Por qué? Porque la Corte permitió eso. Y no debe de permitir eso. Eso no está bien permitido. Arrestaron a mucha gente que son ciudadanos, personas que tienen papeles. Los arrestaron a todos. ¿Por qué? Porque la Corte lo permitió. Y por eso estamos aquí diciendo que esta comunidad, nuestra comunidad, no va a aceptar esto. No lo vamos a aceptar. Vamos a pelear para que no pase de nuevo. Y con eso, did you want to say any last thing? No. With that, no, at the moment, what we're focused on is the outrage that we saw here. And again, I think we keep the focus on that. But again, there's a solution here. There's a solution. And the solution is don't sign these damn warrants. Don't sign a warrant that allows you to go in there and arrest everybody. You're from CBS. How would you have liked to have been arrested because some people in your department might have been undocumented? They come in and they arrest you. Have you ever been arrested before? Well, this would be your opportunity. You know, this would be your opportunity to get arrested for what? For no reason other than working at Channel 8, which might be a crime in and of itself. But putting that aside, just think of how awful that is. So again, I want to thank each and every one of you for being here. Some of us can't stay if you need to ask us questions individually. De nuevo, les doy las gracias a todos. I especially want to thank all of my friends and colleagues that are here. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you.